For it is by grace you are saved through faith, not of yourselves, but it is a gift of God. Ephesians 2:8. Welcome to Grace Bond Ministries.
All right. Well, everybody, welcome to Grace Bond Ministries, and we're back for another video with your host, Christian Walton and Jonathan Jenkins. We have with us Allie Jenkins tonight to discuss the subject of infertility, and it's an issue that they know about and they have fought through, and we're going to discuss that issue tonight. And so, Jonathan, do you want to introduce yourself and I guess introduce our guest? You know, a little more than I do, you know.
All right. So those of y'all know me. I'm Jonathan, founder of Grace Bond Ministries, and you know, usually I'm the one leading these things. So I told Christian, I said, I must really trust you because I'm giving up over my theological baby. So I really love doing Grace Bond Ministries and making videos for you guys. And for myself, I go back and listen to these sometimes too, and just reminiscing about some things, and thinking through some things. But anyways, you know, I made lots of videos and stuff, and what we're going to talk about on this is more of a personal story of mine and Allie's, so we're going to get into that on this podcast. So next to me is my wife, Allie. We've been married a little over 3 years now, and got married in college and started dating in college. And I guess we'll talk about that here more in a second. But so yeah, this is Allie. I'll let her introduce herself a little bit better.
I think you kind of covered it.
Yeah. What's your middle name?
I have two.
Yeah. Well, now y'all know a little bit more, and we'll go into podcast. And so before we get into this subject, I'm sure they all want to know your story. So when did y'all first meet? When did y'all start dating? When did y'all get married? Just the whole shebang.
So we met each other at a BCM group. I think it was the very beginning of the year, and I saw him across the room. So we didn't really meet, but I saw him and we kind of introduced ourselves to the group at that time. But when we officially met each other, we were doing a haunted house at Bruton Parker. I was the president of Delta Mu, and he was rushing for KTK, and we were putting that on. You want to do the next?
Yes. So I always tell people when I first met Allie, she was a demon. So I mean, we were working in this haunted house, and those of you who don't know Greek life, I mean, when you're a pledge, you're like, you know, you're the bottom of the trash can kind of the guy. And
you're a slave.
So yeah, you're a slave. But you know, we were working on this haunted house, and I didn't have the personality at that point, or the confidence, outgoingness, or whatever. It's they had me as an assistant in a room where she was a demon and this other guy was the priest. And so then they actually ended up putting me outside and watching the door. Basically, I stood there and said, "Don't walk in yet. Don't walk in yet." So that's all I did. But excuse me. See, that's what you get talking about demons and stuff. You stay away from the spiritual warfare. See, now I got hiccups. Anyways, so we met and started hanging out a little bit. When we kind of hung out with after the haunted houses, sometimes we hung out and that sort of thing. But eventually, we just kind of started chatting on Facebook and whatnot. I had a wise friend of mine told me that any girl that had you on Facebook must like you. So I don't know how wise he actually was, but hey, sit down.
You need some water?
Yeah. So I'm gonna get some water real quick. But anyways, I'll keep going while she's getting some water. But so anyways, we started hanging out and talking and that sort of thing. And after a while, we went on our first date through Bruton Parker. I mean, we were always our first date we ever went on was a Bruton Parker event. We went to a costume party for the Baptist ministry, and so we just kept on dating and talking, and we actually ended up dating for about a year. And when I was in college, we were both still in college. We got engaged, and then we got married a year after we got engaged. And then, thank you. So then in 2018, December 2018, we got married, and and then I think it was later that year, maybe the next year, she found out about PCOS. But that's kind of the gist of the story. Is there any gaps you want to fill in, or that aren't embarrassing?
No.
Oh, never mind that. No, we're not doing embarrassing.
I mean, you can embarrass Jonathan a little bit. It won't go viral.
Yeah.
It might go viral, but it'll be fine.
So.
Yeah. So there's the story of it all, how it happened. I was able to help out with the wedding a little bit. I was a last minute groomsman, able to come in there. That was fun.
Yeah.
So it was awesome.
Yeah, I was just trying to, at that point, Christian, he's only been there for a year, me and Allie, we met. I was going to make this joke and I forgot, so I'm going to make it now. Me and Allie actually met 1 year before Christian. So,
Damn, that's pretty good.
But yeah, so the Christian and my other friend Braden he's done a podcast with me about children and apologetics. He was a last minute groomsman. They both stepped up to the plate and helped me out there. So good time, fun time.
Oh yeah. All right. And so I guess we'll go ahead and get into it. You had mentioned it a little bit before. And so you had mentioned this thing of PCOS. So what exactly is that? For those who don't know.
PCOS is a type of infertility. It's a hormonal imbalance that causes you to develop cysts on your ovaries. It's called Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, which in reality, they're not really cysts. They're just buildups of follicles. And so the community is trying to get the name changed. But for now, it's called PCOS. So there are 4 different types of PCOS. Let me look at my notes because I want to make sure that I'm saying it right. So we have, let me see. Sorry. Okay. So we have insulin resistant, which means your body is overproducing insulin. So this is what I have. That's why I understand it a little bit more. Your body is craving sugar to boost your energy, and you eat that sugar, but your body doesn't receive the sugar well. Like the insulin is sent out to unlock your cells to receive the sugar, but it's like the key doesn't work on the cell. So your body just keeps producing insulin, and that causes you to have a lot of different symptoms going on. So if you're overproducing insulin, then you're overproducing testosterone, which leads to male pattern baldness, abnormal hair growth, irregular periods, excessive weight gain, and acne along the jawline. Those are the main ones. And that affects around 70% of the women who have PCOS. And then the next one is post-pill PCOS. So that's PCOS that women get after they've taken birth control, hormonal birth control. They have the same kind of symptoms, except it wasn't a genetic thing. It was more geared towards contraceptives and then coming off of those. The third is adrenal PCOS, which is like abnormal stress response. So when you're stressed out, your body starts producing, and it causes your hormone to be imbalanced. And that affects around 10%. And then, well, this is not working out here. And then the last is inflammatory PCOS. So a lot of chronic inflammation causes your symptoms. Something that is hard for women with PCOS is there aren't any, how do I explain this? The symptoms aren't met properly with diagnosis. They try to prescribe you usually 3 different things. Number 1, you just need to lose the weight. You're just overeating and that's your issue. So lose the weight. And that's not the root cause. The root cause is our hormones aren't balanced. So it's causing these things. And with the abnormal hormone balance, you can't treat that issue until you get your hormones fixed. Another way that they've told us is if you're not trying to conceive, then we're going to put you on the pill. We're going to put you on a hormonal birth control to regulate your periods, but that doesn't meet the root cause either. It just regulates your periods. And then the third is we can put you on some aggressive hormone treatments such as metformin and I want to say it's Rubellus, but those are to treat the insulin resistance, and that's a diabetic medication. And the only other thing is to try to conceive. So those are the main things. And if your body is overproducing that testosterone, that messes with your reproductive system as well, which causes irregular periods, which causes infertility. And a lot of women struggle to have children with just naturally. They have to take some kind of medication. They have to go through some other medical procedures such as artificial insemination. They have to do IVF, which is a form of pumping your body through with medications to make sure your pregnancy is viable throughout the entire 9 months that you have it. And then some don't have a really intense case at all, but you don't know that until you're trying to conceive. There's no way to figure that out.
So they don't know a specific gene yet that it may cause. Okay. Yeah.
And you would think that in 2022 we would have better medical medical education on these types of things. We have so many breakthroughs that have come across the medical field in just the past few years, where there's customized professional help, and here we are, and we don't have any customized kind of information about PCOS. It's like, oh yeah, you have a hormone imbalance, so here's our options. If you don't like any of those, deal with it, and eventually you're gonna get ovarian cancer because you can't decide on a treatment process.
Yeah. So I guess the next question would be, is PCOS curable?
That's kind of a difficult question to answer, because some believe that it is through proper diet and exercise and things like that. However, if you go back to the diet you had before, you're going to have those symptoms again. So I don't think that it's curable. I think there are ways to manage it. But right now, I don't think there's a cure, no.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe it's different with the different types or something like that. Mm-hmm. Maybe that goes along. And so, all right, so Jonathan hinted at it a little bit earlier, but when did you figure out that you had PCOS?
So earlier I discussed that I was having some irregular periods at the beginning of 2019. And I listed off some of the reasons why I could have been having irregular periods, such as stress. And so I didn't think anything of it, because as soon as some of those things started to resolve, my period came back. And my period has always been irregular. I've always had issues with my weight. And so that wasn't anything new. However, the year went by and I started my job at Robert Toombs Christian Academy in the fall, and I was having a great time doing my thing. And then COVID started. And so we were home and I didn't have anything to stress about, nothing, nothing out of the ordinary. Everything was very chill. And I didn't have my period for the first 4 months of 2020. And that was concerning because there was nothing for me to stress about or anything that could have caused that. And at that point, I started to notice that I had acne along my jawline. My hairline was starting to recede in some spots. I was gaining weight, and I was growing hair. I still have some thick peach fuzz on my cheeks down here, that as part of the hair growth portion. And so I started getting those weird things and having really bad abdominal pain. And so when everything started opening back up, I went to the Women's Center in Vidalia and had them do an ultrasound. And they said, well, you have to have two of the list of things to be properly diagnosed. So I had the symptoms, which is one, and then two, they saw cysts on my ovaries when they did the ultrasound. And they said, so you have PCOS. And what that is actually, they didn't really tell me what it was. I had to do my own research. But the lady was not very kind, and she said, yeah, so you're probably not going to have a kid on your own. You're going to have a lot of help if you have any at all. And I was like, oh, okay. Here I am, a girl in her late or early 20s. I mean, when was that? That was 2 years ago. I'll be 26. So I was like 24 years old, or 23, 24 years old. And she's telling me that I'm probably never going to have kids. And that was a big deal for me because I want to be a mother. I want to take care and I want to nurture a child. And so that was really hard. And when Mother's Day came around that year, it was really, really hard. I was struggling pretty bad. But yeah.
Good. We would think, I guess the nurse would have a little more compassion, but
you would think. But,
is that how a lot of people react, or?
No, I think I just got a really not nice nurse at that point.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who show compassion to their clients or their patients. Now, the majority of doctors and nurses that are going over the PCOS and how to treat it and things like that, they do say, well, just lose the weight and you'll be able to conceive. And that's not the case. You have to get your hormones in check. Now, losing your weight can help with the hormones because by losing weight, you would have to be on a certain diet, you'd have to be on a certain exercise regimen, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose the weight. So there's just a lot of misunderstandings that happen, and a lot of women with PCOS get their feelings hurt and feel like they're not heard because their medical professionals are telling them that it's their fault, basically, that they're not allowed to conceive, like they're not able to conceive because they're overweight or because they're not trying hard enough. So that's where the insensitivity comes from for us. Yeah. But we know that our medical professionals mean it in a good way. They're trying to help us. Yeah. They're not trying to hurt us. But they just don't have the proper education. So
yeah. No, that's gotta be tough on y'all. And then they're not taught that much in med school. Like ministry, we're not taught a lot of what we need to know going in.
Yeah. It's a lot of experience it's a lot of experience things. Like, I was talking to a friend who is a nurse, and she said whenever they went over these kinds of things, they kind of brushed over it and didn't really stay long, because in the end, the things that are going to be the most common are the things that are repairable, like a broken leg or something to do with your heart, or different things that can be fixed right away. And the more serious things, you can live with PCOS. It's just not, it's not ideal, basically. And I mean, you can live long term with it, but eventually if you don't treat it somehow, then you will end up with ovarian cancer. So that's what stresses me out, is like, if you don't take the time to learn about my illness and try to help me in the best way that you can, then I feel like you don't care about my life, because eventually I'm going to have ovarian cancer if I don't get this fixed. So that's just a stress that I go through.
A lot to take in.
Yeah.
All right, Jonathan, what was your reaction, feelings towards it when you first figured out that you had it, when Allie first told you?
Well, first of all, I am not used to doing a podcast and being the one that speaks the least. Like, this is, I feel awkward. Like I feel like the comment sections, they're still going to pick on me anyways. But so you know, when I heard about PCOS, I mean, you know, when Allie first told me, you know, I knew she was going to the doctor and stuff, and you know, and honestly, during that point, I mean, I was busy as could be too. So, well, I don't know if I ever slowed down, but you know, when I heard it, and honestly, personally, for me, and just in my personal walk, over the last few years, I've grown in sensitivity towards all kinds of things, not just PCOS, but all kinds of things. But when I first heard it, I mean, honestly, I just kind of brushed it off. It didn't really bother me much, because all of those things to me, mostly because they weren't happening to me, you know, I just kind of considered them minimal, you know. And obviously that's not a sensitive way to think about it. So maybe me and that nurse are related somehow. I don't know, but but it did. Now when Allie came to me and said, you know, I don't think I'm going to be able to have kids, you know, that one hit a little different, because now it is affecting me. You know, I mean, I had all these, you know, and I wasn't like, I mean, I was excited to have kids, but it wasn't like, man, I can't wait till the day I have kids, you know. But you know, I just figured it was going to be a part of my life, and I'd have a couple of kids maybe or something. So when I heard that, you know, at first, I mean, you know, most of that stuff, it kind of takes a little bit to sink in anyways, but I mean, at first I just kind of was like, my initial response was, well, okay, that really doesn't matter, because we can still adopt, you know, we can still do this, we can still do that, or whatever. And they weren't saying that it was impossible. They were just saying it would be highly unlikely. So at first it didn't really sink in, but then I think later on, and the more I thought about it, I'm like, oh crap, you know, I'm not going to be able to have my own biological kids, you know. And it got me thinking a lot about, you know, a lot of different things, you know, and you know, just started thinking about, how am I going to deal with this, you know. And not only that, it was also a pain too. And I don't think Allie really mentioned this much, but you know, people would ask us all the time, when you get married, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids? Except for my grandma, for some reason, she didn't want me to have kids until I was like 35 or something. I think she just didn't want to be a great grandma. So, but yeah, I mean, it was tough. Like, well, it's kind of hard to explain, you know, Allie's infertile or whatever, you know. You know, but it opened up the doors for a lot of people, and I started, and honestly, you know, I can't give this girl's name or anything, but we'll just call her a friend, quote unquote. I had mentioned it to her. I said, yeah, we haven't had kids yet because Allie is actually, I mean, the doctors basically told us she's infertile. So it's going to be very difficult to have kids. And then she opened up and said about how you know, she was infertile too and all this stuff, but but she believes in she's a polytheist, you know, believes in multiple gods, and actually has she actually has a tattoo of a goddess. I think it's a goddess on her arm. That is the fertility god. You know, she's the fertility goddess on her arm. You know, and it really hasn't done her any good. But that's a whole other topic for another day. But one of the things, though, and during that time is when I was just, I mean, we talked with Hunter about faith, you know, a couple weeks ago or whatever on the podcast, and you know, I was really getting close to Hunter, and really God was really pushing me on my faith to begin with, you know, and I just remember thinking, you know, well, I'm going to have faith in God through all of this. You know, if God wants me to have kids, I don't care what a doctor says, you know. It never really matters what a doctor says, because God is the ultimate, you know, decision maker. So if God wants something else to come about, he will make something else come about, no matter what. And we'll get into some of those, maybe some of those stories here in just a second, some like miraculous births in the Bible, maybe. So, but so I was really trying hard to put my faith in God, but it definitely is bothersome knowing, like, you know, thinking, you know, man, I mean, I have my own biological kids. It's definitely bothersome. But it wasn't, I definitely don't think it was as difficult for me as it was for Allie. Because one thing this other girl did was she kind of explained to me, you know, well, listen, you know, a woman is born, and this is what they, you know, almost like what they feel like their purpose is in this world, is to be a mother, you know. And so then it really hit me. I'm like, wow, this is a lot tougher than it sounded to me, you know, and especially for Allie, you know. So that kind of made me step back a little bit and realize, hey, this is actually pretty tough. So then, and me and Allie weren't too good about praying with each other. And I think I told her after I'd been praying it for about 9 months or something, or a year or two, but I had been praying. I said, God, just give us a baby when the time is right. You know, we don't want a baby now, at least I don't think the time's right, but give us a baby when the time is right. And how all that came about, maybe we'll get to that in the next part, but it was pretty phenomenal how it all came about, supernatural even.
Yeah. So how did you help her through it? Once they kind of hit you?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few nights where, you know, Allie struggled with it a little more than other nights, you know. So just sitting there and talking to her, and basically what I just said there, you know, is, you know, we got to have faith in God, because no matter what a doctor says, God is the ultimate physician. And I mean, if he can, you know, he can part a Red Sea, I don't think he'll have a problem, you know, putting a baby into somebody that he wants to. You know, so I think that was the main thing, and just listening and trying to understand, you know, PCOS and infertility. That was pretty big too. But that would be the same thing I would tell any woman, or even a man, you know, that was dealing with this too. His wife has it, or whoever, you know, is you still got to trust God. I mean, no matter, for any medical condition anybody's diagnosed with, you've got to trust God. The doctors do not have the final say. God has the final say. So that was the main theme of what I really tried to encourage Allie with over time. And then I honestly, well, the funny part is it seemed like later on, after I did that Allie actually ended up having more faith in it than I did, even though I was the one that's saying it.
Yeah.
You know? I think that's kind of a preacher thing. You know, we understand what we're saying, but sometimes we don't believe it.
And don't click.
Yeah, it doesn't click right in our heads or something. But yeah, that was the main thing. Just put your faith in God.
That's good.
To add on, Jonathan brought up people coming up to us and asking us when we're going to have children. And every time somebody would come up, it was like they're ripping off that scab. It's painful. It's brought all these feelings back up. And part of me said, well, I'm infertile. I have PCOS. It's a type of infertility, so we probably won't be able to have children. By saying that, part of me was trying to educate, but another part of me was speaking from a place of hurt and saying, wow, you just put your foot in your mouth, didn't you? And that was the wrong mentality to have. But I said it in a loving way, so it didn't come across that way as well. So that's a part where it affected me. And at some points I was really upset Like, God, why did you put me in this situation? Why did you give me this this type of infertility? And like, what is your purpose? I don't understand what's going on, so please enlighten me. Also, my top spiritual gift is faith. So I've always had faith in God that he would provide and that he would do what's right, and he would do good by us if we are following him and following what he wants us to do and all of that. And so I knew in my heart, I was like, you know what? I'm struggling right now, but you know what? I have a God that loves me, and I have a God that's going to take care of me and provide me with a child, whether that be biological or a child that I've adopted or I'm fostering, or just somebody else's kid that I can love on, you know? So I always had that in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Good stuff. And so I guess for those who don't know, they have had this process and they have had Emerald. And so y'all want to describe the process, like how hard it might have been, and then just figuring out you were pregnant, what all came with that.
Well, this is a biology class, but not as funny.
No.
Would they love each other? No.
How about you give your backstory up until that point? Don't share my stuff. What you did on your side up until.
Yeah. So we graduated from college. This was before we knew we were pregnant. So COVID hit, 2020, the devil year or whatever. And COVID hit, and we actually got called to Florida, and got called to we barely found a house. I moved into a house with no job, and barely found a house, barely found enough money to pay for this house to rent, because Florida is expensive. But we moved to Florida. I started youth pastoring at this country church. It's a pretty small size church, and a huge youth group though. And I've talked about that many times on the podcast. And then the same thing happens there. How long y'all been married? Y'all have any kids or whatever? The same conversations. Well, she's infertile, and it's the same conversation over and over and over again. And honestly, at that point, I didn't see like a settling down point, like hey man, this is where we're going to be forever, because Christian knows Christian and Hunter and just about anybody who had listened that I trusted knew about all the struggles I was having over there. And so something just felt off, like man, I'm just not supposed to be here. And so anyways, I'm youth pastor of this church. I'm working all the time and all this, and we didn't know she was pregnant until basically February of 2021. But she was already January of 2021. But she was already pregnant before then in 2020. But we didn't know that until 2021. And so I just kind of continued to pray, and my prayer life up until basically the last year, I think it's been pretty weak. I haven't done it consistently until now. And so whenever I prayed, though, I did pray for that. And I say, God, give us a child when you think we're ready to have a child. So I just kind of kept praying that prayer, not really expecting an answer anytime soon. It's just, I was just praying that prayer. And I think that was because I knew that I knew in my spirit that I was not going to be at this church very long. I didn't think that about the area. I just knew I probably wasn't going to be at that church very long. But so that's kind of where I was at up until the point, I found out. So you want to jump in there and then start from there?
Yeah. So I don't know if you noticed the negative vocabulary that Jonathan had towards the move down. I think that was where we differed, because I felt so strongly that God was calling us to Florida. We had 3 different options. Number one, we had moved to New Orleans to further Jonathan's education. We had moved to Florida, and then the third was just stay in Georgia. And I sat there and I thought about all the pros and cons, and I prayed about it, and I said, God, give me a desire for whichever one you want us to do. And I just felt this strong feeling, I didn't feel peace about two of them, but I did feel strong peace about moving to Florida. And I had to help Jonathan see that that was the best option. That's what God was wanting us to do. We even had a test. It was very
spiritual, very biblical test.
It was so frustrating. So I had gone over the pros and cons lists with Jonathan, and he was like, no, I still think we need to go to New Orleans. No.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'm going to write down what all three of our options. I'm going to lay them out on the ground, and Tucker is going to pick which one. Tucker is our dog. And Tucker is going to step on the one that he wants, that God wants us to do. And so I laid down the three papers, and Tucker went straight to Florida, straight to the paper that said Florida. And he's like, no, that's cheating. And so I mixed them around and put a treat on every single one of them. And he went straight to Florida both times. And I'm like, see, it's not me trying to cheat or manipulate or anything. That's where we need to go. And he's like, okay. And he didn't really think about it like that. But I knew in my heart, I was like, that's where we need to be.
God's speaking through a dog, man. I'm gonna start being nicer to dogs.
He spoke to a donkey.
Yeah.
Dog.
But no, actually the second time, this was crazy. The second time she put that treat down,
Your iPad.
Oh, my daughter's probably texting a million people on my iPad right now. But when Allie put those papers out the second time, she didn't just mix them up. She put the two New Orleans and stay in place, basically, New Orleans and Georgia, put those down here, like in the front. And then behind those papers, she put Florida.
Yeah.
Tucker walked past two little treats, walked to the third paper behind it.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Wow. And I mean, man,
That's
it was crazy. Yeah.
I knew.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so we pack up. We don't have a place to live. We don't have jobs. We don't have anything. And on our way, Jonathan's having a lot of anxiety. And I'm like, you know what? I'm cool as a cucumber. I have no issues, no cares in the world. Just get me down to Florida safely. That's all I care about. And so we get there, and we're staying with my parents for a couple weeks. And we get a phone call from my stepdad while we're out, and he says, hey, have you guys heard of Northside Baptist? And we said no. And he said, well, they're looking for a youth pastor if you're willing. And so we went in, and as soon as we met them, Jonathan got the job, and so there's that. And what's so crazy is we had prayed for that, but also we had prayed for God to open up a house for us to live in that's in a good area, in the same little area that we're going to be working in. And literally this house was a 15-minute walk to the church, a 5-minute drive. So then I was like, see what I'm telling you? God's going to provide. And we found other jobs as well, and it was a really cool situation. But anyway, to how we have Emerald. So we had been struggling, and we were really stressed and everything like that. I even had an issue where I was under so much stress at work that fall, the fall of 2020, that I was physically sick. Like, I was sick to my stomach to go to work. My hair was falling out even more than normal. Just a lot of different physical things that come along with excessive stress. And it all originated from one person that I had to work with. And she was above me. She was my superior. And so I didn't have any way out except for being moved to a different section of the school or quitting altogether and going to a different job and things like that. Well, God pulled me out of that situation. He had something happen where she was making false accusations against me, and that put even more stress on me. But in the long run, it ended up working well because I stayed faithful to what a Christian should do in stressful situations like that when they're being falsely accused. I held myself to a higher esteem, and I didn't let it get to me. I just did my job, and I loved her the way that Christ would love her. And personally, I think that Emerald is my reward for that situation. But they told me, you have to stay in that section of the school until after you come back from Thanksgiving break. And I said, okay, that's fine. And so finished out my time, went on Thanksgiving break. And while I'm on Thanksgiving break, I'm sitting there in my grandparents' house in Georgia. And I just pray. I'm like, God, I don't know what you have in store for me for 2021, but I just ask that you bless us with a child. Like, I don't know if that's in your cards, but that's my desire. And I wish that you would give me that. And so came back, got put in I was put in a different section of the school, loved that job, that position there, and spent the rest of the school year, had a great time. Well, go through the month of December, and I have a complete peace. I'm like, you know what? I've already accepted that God's not going to give us a child until we're ready. And if that is biological, great. If it's not, I'm okay. And so I went through the holidays. In January, I started feeling real sick. Like, I was getting a little bit nauseous. I was so tired, so tired all day. And I am not a napper. I do not nap at all, ever.
Yeah.
And for the first week of January, I was taking a nap as soon as I get home from work. And I'm like, this is so bizarre. Why? Yeah. Why is this happening? I started having irregular cramps. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to take a pregnancy test. And this wasn't the first time that I've taken a pregnancy test. I would take one regularly just to double check and make sure.
Yeah.
And it was instant dye stealer pregnancy test. So like there's a control line and then there's a pregnancy line. So the control line is supposed to stay the right color, the color of the dye. And then if you're pregnant, then the other line shows up. Well, the pregnancy line ended up being darker than the control line. It stole dye from the control line to the pregnancy line. And I was just standing there staring at it. I'm like, what? No, this is not real. This is not real. And did I get a fake one? Like, did I get a faulty one? Is this a false pregnancy test? Like, what is this? And so after I composed myself, I put it in a box and wrote a card out and said, could be pink, could be blue. All we know is that we are due. And I put it in a box and I went to the church and I was like, okay, here you go, Jonathan. Here's a present. And he's like, what? And he opens it and he's like, oh my gosh, you're pregnant. And then like a day or two after, I started having serious morning sickness. So, that was intense. But what's crazy is I used to be really big into bullet journaling, which is basically you make your own journal out of a notebook, a plain notebook, and you decorate it and make it all cute and stuff. Well, the year of 2021, I decided that I was going to have a word for the year. And I wasn't sure what word I wanted. I was thinking about a few different words, and each month would have a different way to use that word. And so I went through the dictionary, and the word cultivate just like prominent in my mind. As soon as I ran over it, and I was like, ooh, cultivate. That sounds cool. That sounds like a good one, because we just had this year of basically famine in our country, all across the world actually. And now that everything's coming together and trying to go back to a somewhat normal stage, this word cultivate is perfect. And what cultivate means is to nurture and to grow. And so I was like, oh, I can cultivate relationships with my family. I can cultivate relationships with my friends, cultivate plants. I want to garden this year, things like that. And then I found out I was pregnant, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm cultivating a baby. So that was crazy. Awesome. But yeah, that's how we ended up with her. The pregnancy wasn't too bad. I had morning sickness pretty bad until the 3rd trimester, I think it was.
Yeah.
And horrible food aversion to chicken. Could not stand it.
Wow.
It made me throw up.
My food's chicken.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing was, like I said, I kept praying. I kept saying, God, give us a baby when we're ready, And when at that point, I've always tried to, not talk about my situation there a whole lot publicly, but at that point, I was not making enough money. I was barely making enough money for us to survive, let alone take care of a child too. And the pastor basically just called me a hireling for asking for more money. And so I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, what in the world am I going to do? Because come September, I'm going to have to take care of this baby. And I basically decided I will take care of this baby. And if this pastor in this church doesn't want to help me, and really it was the pastor, if they don't want to help me, then I'm going to take care of my child. I will leave. And so I've been praying all that time for God to, provide and give us a baby at the right time and all this stuff. Well, it just so happened, even a month after that, about the same time, or maybe right before we started telling everybody else we were pregnant, I had another situation with him, a pretty bad situation where we got into a pretty vivid argument with each other in a meeting about a brotherhood issue. And I brought too many kids. I brought youth to a brotherhood meeting. Oh, big deal, I'm the devil. I mean,
how dare they?
I'm the thorn in his flesh, I guess. But and so after that, I'm like, you know what? I'm out of here. I never told them this, so they don't even know this. But I highly doubt they're going to watch it. But after that meeting, I said, I'm done. I'm done here. I'm leaving. This church isn't going to provide for me. Not going to take care of me. I'm leaving. And so then, I mean, it was only maybe a couple of weeks later, and I get this call about the church I'm at now from Pastor Mike. Well, not even Pastor Mike. Again, it was Allie's stepdad, had a connection for me, and the Holy Spirit worked it out. And so I called Mike, and pretty much within the next couple of weeks, I was on a roll to get moved over here. And the same situation, no house or nothing like that. But long story short, we moved over here. I found a job at the funeral home with basically no problem at all. And I moved to the church, and we didn't have a house for a month. But, we lived with the pastor for a month, and then we moved into this little apartment we've got, and now not only is God providing for us, he's also providing enough extra to take care of the child as well. And, to get, we had 2 old cars. So finally we've got a decent car we can use and all sorts of stuff. And so, I mean, when I prayed, God, give us the baby at the right time, I think he did. He said, now you're ready. And just from the moment she knew she was pregnant. I mean, at that point we weren't ready, but he knew 9 months down the road we would be ready. So, I mean, it was just awesome. It was just absolutely phenomenal to see that. I mean, it was absolutely amazing.
God's timing is always on time, never early, never late.
Yep.
We may think it's late or too early, but it's a good part of it. And so I know you talked about maybe some biblical examples of infertility. That was awesome to hear y'all's story, and I was encouraged by it. I know everybody else will be encouraged by it. And so you got some biblical examples, Jonathan?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of like miraculous births in the Bible. You know, everybody knows about well, I guess not everybody, but there's a story of Abraham and Sarah, and God says, you know what, I'm going to give Sarah a child. And Abraham and Sarah both laughed. They laughed at God. I'm thinking, well, what nut job, especially during Old Testament times, laughs at Yahweh,
Yeah, the name you couldn't even say.
Yeah, right. You couldn't even say his name, and you're laughing at the guy. And so they were laughing because they were like 100 years old. So I think she was 90. I'm pretty sure is what the text says. She was 90 years old, and God said, "I'm going to give you a child," and she laughed, but she got her child. And in Romans and in Genesis, it talks about how they had faith, how Abraham especially had faith in God, even though at first he thought it was crazy. Later on, he had faith in God. And then I was just talking. I told Christian about this the other day. A completely bizarre conversation, but it really helped me because I've never defended the virgin birth of Jesus before until this conversation. And I'm not going to get into all those details, but even at the virgin birth, I mean, because basically this other guy was claiming that we believed that God basically had sex with Mary in some sort of way, or God or an angel, or somebody even said maybe King David. I don't know. I told him King David is dead. Okay? But that's what he was trying to kind of throw at me, and I don't think that's how it happened. I think that God basically just the whole idea of like conception, or intercourse and all that was that whole step was skipped, and he just put a baby in her womb without any of that. And the Bible's pretty clear that Joseph did not have sexual relations with Mary, and it was just absolutely phenomenal. And, that kind of goes with that Old Testament verse, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I just don't think that, given that God can make a human being out of the dust of the ground, I don't think he's going to have a problem putting a baby in the womb of a mother if he wants it to happen. And so it's so cool reading those stories and then seeing them come to life in 2022. As a I'm like a part-time cessationist or something, but that's another topic for another day. But that's hard for me, it being just my roots of cessationism, to really accept that miracles do happen like that today. But I think our child was a miracle, and not only that, through the whole process, there's a high chance, even if you do get pregnant under PCOS, that the baby has lots of issues. You have issues during the pregnancy, after the pregnancy, but that baby has been healthy as could be, absolutely no problems at all, and it's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'd like to share some women from the Bible. So the first person that comes to mind is Sarah. But Jonathan's view and what he was saying earlier was a lot more positive than what I see it as. I see a lot of doubt in Sarah. She knew that she was going to have a kid, but she didn't know when, and eventually she gave up. She was just so tired, and she thought in her mind, I'm of old age and I don't have any kids now, and in that time, the only worth that a woman had was how many children she could give her husband and how many boys she could give her husband, how many heirs. And up until she was 90 years old, she wasn't able to give Abraham any. And so she decided to give up and say, you know what, Abraham, just take my maid and have a baby with her, because she's the only way that you're ever gonna have a kid, because obviously I cannot. And a lot of that doubt I feel as well, or felt before, because here I am, a young girl, and I've been diagnosed with infertility, saying that I'm not going to be able to have kids probably. And my husband is young as well. He still has his whole life ahead of him, and I'm not going to be able to give him a family. And I know that was
Yeah.
something that he wanted. So eventually parts of my heart felt like, you know what? I know God doesn't see divorce as a viable option. But maybe it is best for Jonathan if we just split up and he has a family with somebody else. I would never split us up, but in my mind, I thought, well, maybe it's better if he just has somebody else who can take care, like have a baby, and then we'll take care of it or something like that. Just trying to find ways to compromise. And in my, like, after I had those thoughts, I was like, you know what? No, that is so stupid. Like,
Yeah.
why am I even feeling that way? And I understand why, because I was hurt and I was doubting and things like that.
Yeah.
And so another woman is, I believe it was Rachel. God didn't let her have kids for a minute there in her marriage with Jacob. He kept blessing Leah with all the children. And partially, I think that was because she resented her sister. She was very upset with Leah, and it was like a competition. And so I think that was basically a timeout for Rachel. Like, oh, you want to have a competition? Yeah, have a seat. So those are the two that really stick out to me. But Rachel did end up having a child, and Sarah is the one that I mainly resonate with, because she was told before, and then had this miracle baby at an old age, even though I'm not at an old age, but I felt a lot of connection from Sarah. I had something else, but I can't think of what it was. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely a good connection. Both you and Sarah had these, what looked like stumbling blocks, what looked like barricades.
Yeah.
God was able to come in, miracle work through them. A woman I was thinking of was Samuel the prophet's mom, Hannah. You could see her. She was in the temple. She was crying, just begging for a child. And you don't hear too much about like her up to that point, like what she had been going through. But you could tell she was hurting. And the priest thought she was drunk and told her to go home. And she's like, no, I'm praying for a child. And we see God come through. Samuel was born through her. So that's just some of the few examples.
I remember what I was going to say.
Yeah, go for it.
So with PCOS, if you do become pregnant, there's a good possibility, like over a 50% chance, that you will end up having a miscarriage before the pregnancy is viable. Like, it's viable, obviously, but until you try to wait until the first trimester is finished before you start telling. I was just so excited that I started telling very quickly after. But with PCOS, you have over a 50% chance of losing the baby before the first trimester is even over. And once you hit that first trimester, it goes down to 50%. So there's a 50-50 chance that I was going to lose Emerald. And I knew in my heart, I was like, you know what? I don't have any worry at all in my mind, because I know that God put this baby in here for a purpose. And if he put her in here as a miracle child for us, then he will allow her to go full term and be a healthy baby. And every single visit I went, they kept telling me, yep, baby looks great. Everything's on track. She's actually going ahead of schedule. So that always gave me encouragement that God was taking care of her in my womb and making sure that she was going to make it full term. And actually, when she was born, she was born 8 pounds 3 ounces, which is a very healthy baby. And she was in the 80th percentile on everything. So
Wow.
what that means is out of 100 children, on the growth chart, she is marked in the 80s
Yeah.
out of all 100. So she was a very
Awesome.
large child,
Yeah.
which was a huge blessing. And that it's just a miracle. It's amazing. I thank God for her all the time. Like, thank you, God, for allowing us to have this baby who is healthy, who is on track with everything, who is healthy, and she's smart, she's kind, she's such a perfect baby. Honestly, we couldn't have asked for a better child.
Definitely. And this is a testament of, if we follow Christ, if we are faithful, that he will give us the desires of our heart. So
I agree. Yeah.
that's a great testament, something that y'all be able to share with her when she's older too. So that's even better. But if y'all don't have anything else, I guess we can wrap it up. Y'all got any more?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of making this whole thing was, so we could send something, to somebody struggling with this, the guy or the girl, and then we're always open for anybody to reach out to us. Best way if you're watching this channel is to email gracebondministries@gmail.com. If you want to talk to one of us or ask more questions or whatever. But if you just listening to this, I hope that if you're struggling, if you're in the midst of this, there's going to be people who are told this, they don't have kids, I love studying Philippians, and you see in Paul's life how he struggled with so much stuff. He struggled with a lot of stuff, but no matter what he struggled with, he was always content. And he said, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." He said, I'm content in Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is my whole world. And so if that's your foundation, all this other stuff's going to be tough. It's going to suck. But if Christ is your foundation, you can be content, and you can even rejoice in the Lord, no matter your circumstances. So just keep that in mind if you're really struggling with this, and just know that the book never closes unless God closes it. So there's always a chance for God to step in and do something.
It's just a testament that God is still moving, God is still working, even when we may not see him. Always like to hear the phrase, the teacher is silent during the test. Because when we're testing, the teacher is silent, and they can't just sit there and give us the answers most of the time. We've got to endure the test. And so thank you, Allie, for joining us, and y'all go ahead and check out all the other videos we have. Leave us a 5-star review if you want to. Apple Podcasts, find us on YouTube, Facebook, anything else, and we'll see y'all pretty soon. We don't know what video we're going to do next, but stay tuned and we'll get that out to y'all.
We need something really controversial to get back out there.
Yeah, throw some topics out. We're down to talk about.
We're going to do a recording in Ukraine, on the Ukrainian-Russian border. All right.
Who's flying us there?
Now I got to go back and edit that out. All right. We'll see y'all on the next podcast.
See ya.
See y'all later.
Thank you so much for watching the Grace Bond Ministries podcast or listening to the podcast. I know there's various ways that you could be listening to this right now or watching this right now, but I just want to say thank you so much. And if you would, wherever you're listening, if you're listening on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel. On the podcast, please leave a 5-star review and write a little thing in there. If you're on Facebook, leave a comment. Let me know how this impacted you, or even any other questions or comments or concerns you may have. And also, if you have an idea or you have something you'd really want to talk more deeply about, you can always email me at gracebondministries@gmail.com. But thank you so much. Remember, for it is by grace you are saved through faith, and not of yourselves, for it is the gift of God. Thank you for listening to Grace Bond Ministries.